The Patriots and the Packers have wide open wide receiver vacancies ready for an elite player to step into and become a bona fide fantasy star. We discuss the best landing spot for free agent and rookie wide receivers on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about the best vacancies around the league for a wide receiver position to come into and just be a great fantasy asset for the 2025 season. So just these opportunities around the league where they're going to see an opportunity to get 130 plus targets immediately. And we think it'd be a nice spot for them to land as well. And then we'll discuss which players we would like to see in these roles as well. We already did this with running backs on yesterday's show. So if you missed that, go listen to it. The number one top opening. This is hard because there's a lot of openings around the league for wide receiver one. And this one might seem a little scary, but it's the Patriots wide receiver one role. I mean, they don't even have close to a wide receiver one on their team, right? It's Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker. Those are the guys on the roster right now. They so clearly need a wide receiver one. They have the opportunity with they have the number 2 or number 3 overall draft pick. So they have the opportunity to get an absolute elite guy right at the top of this class. Who would you like to see as the wide receiver one for the Patriots, Vinny?
Yeah, I mean, remember all that Jalen Polk talk? Oh, someone's got to catch the ball. Apparently no one has to catch the ball in New England, and they mixed it up, right? Kayshon Boutte had a random game. We had Hunter Henry do some things. It was just all over the board for the Patriots. The offense was just a mess. Now they bring in Josh McDaniels, and they're trying to throw it back to the Patriots days of old, Mike Vrabel and McDaniels, and just try to get things settled here. But the Alex Van Pelt was just not a good fit for what they were trying to do here. And now you have Drake May getting a chance to learn from McDaniels. He's kind of like the Vic Fangio or Steve Spagnuolo of offense. He's terrible when he's a head coach, but he's very good at scheming up when he can just focus on offense and play calling. So looking back, getting to the answer, you look at Tedero McMillan. He reminds you of Randy Moss. I'm not going to say he's going to be Randy Moss, but we saw McDaniels, that's when he had his boom, right? When Moss went off, big target who can be the alpha outside, 6'4", 6'5"-ish, can make the big plays, use Drake May's big arm, finish well in the red zone, just be a guy that can get open because of his size and win some battles here. That's what they need. So right there, number 3 overall. The Titans are probably going to go quarterback or best defensive player available. At number 2, Browns will probably go best defensive player available or Travis Hunter if they want to use him as a dual threat. So I think McMillan will be sitting there on a tee for the Patriots, and I would not go away from him, right, unless they think that they can play Hunter in a dual role. They've had some versatile players in the past, right, and including Vrabel, so they could think about that. But if he's still there, the Browns don't take him at number 2, which I think there's a small chance of that, then McMillan is a guy for the Patriots, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they need to build around Drake May, right? If they took their quarterback last year, they knew he was going to have very little around him. I think Drake May still looked pretty solid. I mean, no, it wasn't an insane rookie season at all. There was his ups and downs.
Pro bowler.
He had, yeah, that's crazy. He had no one around him though, right? So we expected this to be kind of a struggle first year. Now it's time to build around him like crazy. I love that McMillan already has the nickname T-Mac. I mean, a T-Mac is not going to be bad in any sport.
No.
He's going to be great, you know? So, and he looks like a true typical wide receiver one that could be great in the NFL. So I would love this landing spot for him. I think it'd be a great landing spot. I would not be scared at all being like, oh, it's the Patriots, like wide receivers don't do well there. And, Drake May, I think that would actually be a great pairing. So yes, best opening and great landing spot for McMillan there. Now, the second best spot, this one was a toughie, but we decided on the Packers wide receiver one role. And you might say, they have a bunch of okay wide receivers, right? Romeo Doubs, okay. Christian Watson, I mean, in any given
He's
moment, he
okay
could
when
be
he's
great or below average. I mean, it goes back and forth in any given play. Jaden Reed, I think, could be really good, but they don't trust him enough and they don't utilize him on the regular. It's just a bunch of guys that are pretty good wide receiver 2s or wide receiver 3s. They need a true elite top target for Jordan Love. They paid this guy already. They paid Jordan Love all this money. Get him a true guy. Don't ruin his career. And a guy I would love to see here is Abuka from, am I saying that right? Agbuka?
Yeah. Yeah.
From Ohio State. I think he'd be great in this offense with Matt LaFleur. Great separator, great after the catch. He's a willing blocker too, which the Packers have to have as their wide receivers. So I love this landing spot for him, and I actually think he's the second best wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, after McMillan, there's going to be a battle for that second wide receiver. You have Luther Burden, the third out of Mizzou, that is going to be in the mix here for that spot. You also have Matthew Golden, as we saw him emerge during Texas season this year with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. So he really came through as kind of the better receiver over Isaiah Bond as the season went on. And, they're Golden is rising up boards. I'll just say that he's being a potential first round pick. But I agree with you. Burton or Ibuka would be the better picks here. I do like Golden, however, if he can still get there, because he's a big play guy that I think would fit well with Jordan Love. Like, I think I'd say the other guys are a little bit more those technical route runners that they need. And I think basically anyone who goes to the Packers of these three guys that's going to stay healthy. That's the number one thing, right? Between Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs sometimes just disappearing and getting hurt, and Christian Watson always seeming to be hurt. Like, these guys are not reliable. And the other thing about Jaden Reed, he's not an outside guy. He's best used in the slot when they use him like a poor man's Deebo Samuel. Maybe he's the rich man's Deebo Samuel at this rate, the way that Samuel's playing. But he's the inside guy. They need a true outside guy. But it doesn't have to be necessarily that big dude, right? I think Burden is a little bit under 6 foot. I think you just look at all the Ohio State receivers. They're always so sound. They run really good routes. They get open. So I do personally, if they're going for the big plays, I think you have to go for Golden, get that field stretcher that is there. Also, there's a possibility that Burden and Ibuka may not be there when the Packers are selecting. So I know there's something about Golden that I really like in terms of having his trajectory go up. I still think he can untap some of that potential. So, look, all three of these guys are great. Golden, Ibuka, or Burden. Just get one of them, Packers. Just get one of them. Do it. You never did for Aaron Rodgers. Never a first-round pick for Aaron Rodgers at this position. You got Devontae Adams. He's a second-rounder. So let's do it for Jordan Love. Get him a first-round wide receiver that is legit, and any of these three guys would be great.
And if they don't want to do it early in the draft, then go after T. Higgins and get Jordan Love, a true wide receiver 1, because T. Higgins would be that for him, be a huge asset for him. But we like T. Higgins to land somewhere else in our third favorite landing spot. We will discuss who that is right after a quick break. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. When I'm backing my favorite team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. That's FanDuel.com for your first shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'm actually shocked this wasn't higher up on your list, but I think we came to a nice agreement here that number 3rd on the list, Bills wide receiver 1. And this is where we obviously are going to have T. Higgins, right? Because I do think for the Bills to give a guy 150 plus targets, it's going to have to be an elite superstar, again, like they had in Stephon Diggs, right? Or they're going to be open to spreading the ball around like they did this year when there's not really a great guy out there. But if you give Josh Allen a guy like T. Higgins. Think about what he did with Gabe Davis, right? And T. Higgins is 100 times his talent. It would be such a beautiful match. And I would love, I mean, this opening is there for someone to take. You just have to be really, really good and earn those targets from Josh Allen.
Yeah, it would also weaken the Bengals and make them look for a receiver early. And again, the Bengals can be a thorn in the side of some of these teams starting to have to get any kind of decent defense with Joe Burrow. So that would be a bummer for Joe Burrow, but a huge upgrade here for Josh Allen. The question is that we may not think now that Keon Coleman has any shot of being a number one type receiver. Amari Cooper, they traded for him, but he's a free agent coming up here. Otherwise, they kind of piecemealed everything together with slot dudes, Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, who came over. Then Dalton Kincaid was not as effective as we wanted as that hybrid wide receiver tight end. He just has not made it all work here on this team. So, yeah, you're right. They need kind of that guy to stand out and be the man here. And maybe that'll also help Coleman, right? We're second rounder. There's not a lot of pressure on him without Cooper to be the main guy here. So Higgins, I think, let's see how aggressive the Bills are here in free agency. I think they need to think about it a little bit more and try to, hey, look, the Chiefs are a little bit down and out after losing the Super Bowl. Like, jump on them right now. Go after a way to get better than them and push past them in the playoffs. And Higgins can definitely help do that. So I'm excited. I don't think the Bills will invest too highly into receiver again. They passed and traded out of the Xavier Worthy spot last year and ended up with Coleman in the second round. So I think they have to go the route here. Before we get into a team that could fit Stephon Diggs, do you see any potential, Michelle, of a Stephon Diggs Bills reunion all of a sudden after that ACL?
No, I really don't. I think Diggs was miserable there. I think he was a locker room kind of headache by the end of it. I don't think they'd bring him back. I don't think either side would really want that.
Agree.
But yeah, when you're looking at the Bills roster, it's Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel. Those are the only guys on this current roster that are not free agents this year. So they desperately need a retool. They desperately need to give Josh Allen a top guy. I mean, Matt Collins led this team in receiving touchdowns this year at 5, and he's a free agent, right? It's not good. I mean, and Josh Allen was still great, but get him that true weapon that he can lean on, and that will be huge. So that would be a great opening for anyone that's really talented to come into, but specifically T. Higgins because he's the best guy available. Now, our fourth best opening, it's not a wide receiver 1 role. It's actually a wide receiver 2, and it's with the Rams as long as Matthew Stafford is still there, right? We got to have that caveat because they need a quarterback. But just like the Bills, I mean, their wide receiver room right now, if they do trade away Cooper Kupp, it's going to be Puka Nacua, Jordan Whittington, and Xavier Smith, because their other guys are all free agents, and Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, and Tyler Johnson. So those would be the only 3 that they actually have secure if they were to trade Cooper Kupp. And it can't just be Puka and no one else. Puka's clearly the wide receiver 1, but they need to add a true wide receiver 2 for Matthew Stafford. Who would you like to see there?
Yeah, I threw out actually Diggs. That's why I asked you about Diggs. Like, I think Diggs would kind of like Los Angeles. I could see it, right? I mean, in terms of I'm going to be the 2, but I can work easily there. I mean, he's been at his best when he's like that, right? We've seen it with Adam Thielen. We saw a little bit last year with Nico Collins. That would be a very dangerous duo to have, I think, for the Rams, because Diggs is such a good route runner. They can open things for him. Now, the Rams might be looking for a guy who can line up the slot, but Diggs does have some experience doing that, where Puka Nacua is going to be their main outside guy. So I could see Diggs, a veteran like that, being effective. I don't want to go see them go get Robert Woods or somebody right that from the Texans and like, oh, we're going to go back to what we did like a long time ago. But I think a little bit of a minor investment here to get Diggs, and you might get him on a discount, right, because of the injury and the age. But I think you plug and play him a little bit on the cheap here. You already have your Alpha and Nacua, and then Diggs could put up some numbers here. So look, it's pretty loose. I think they could do a lot of things here and go in different directions. Another name that I'll throw out is Chris Godwin, because he plays the slot and he can also go on the outside. So he's also, however, coming off another major knee injury. So I don't know if the Rams want to take a shot on that player, especially when Cooper Kupp has his share of durability issues and is getting older himself.
Yeah, I mean, it could be with Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin. I do think Godwin's the most interesting. He's coming off that dislocated ankle, but you would think he'd be plenty good by the time they get to next season. I think Chris Godwin would be actually a pretty big step up to what Cooper Kupp is right now, right? He still has a couple years. He's 28 years old. He is about to turn 29, but he still has years out there that he's going to be great. I would love the Chris Godwin connection there with the Rams, or going deeper, Darius Slayton, getting Matthew Stafford that deep threat with Puka Nacua as the main target. I think Darius Slayton is a pretty solid wide receiver, actually stuck on a really bad team. So it's interesting if he can land himself in a good spot, like the Rams wide receiver 2 role. I would be actually really interested in that.
Yeah, the Rams wide receiver 2 is going to be interesting in fantasy overall because they don't really have that consistent presence at tight end. I know we tried to help or force Colby Parkinson to happen in fantasy, and it didn't really happen. Kyren Williams is not much of a pass catcher, right? They had a little bit of Tyler Higbee, but still, again, there's going to be a significant amount of passing and volume that's going to happen with the Rams. And for that other guy, other than Nacua, I think he's going to be a key role here. So I'm excited to see what they do. Sean McVay, and anytime we get a receiver with Sean McVay, we saw it last year in a similar system with the Vikings, right? Jordan Addison breaking through with Justin Jefferson on the other side. So that's what we want in Los Angeles, for sure.
Now, we have 2 more openings that we're excited about. And this next one we're going to talk about, number 5, was actually in contention as my number 1 opening. But we kind of differed here. So I put him down here. But I absolutely think this is a great vacancy and opportunity for anyone to land in. We will reveal who that team is right after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by PrizePicks. Football season is over, but basketball is in full swing. There's no better way to stay in the game than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Look, the NFL, we had a good run with our PrizePicks picks of the week. NBA is here, though, all throughout, so you can go. A lot of exciting stuff. You have the NBA All-Star weekend as well, so good time to get in on the action. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's only at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Michelle, it is time to close the show. Let's look at our final 2 openings of our top 6 best places for wide receivers to land for fantasy football purposes in 2025. Who do we have next?
Yeah, this is a slot that I'm really, really excited about. It's the Panthers wide receiver 1 role. We saw the emergence of Bryce Young at the end of last season as a passer. We saw Dave Canales' offense finally starting to click. I mean, Jalen Coker came up with 110 yard and a touchdown performance in week 15. Adam Thielen from weeks 13 through 17 had 3 games with at least 99 receiving yards, 2 games with over 100 and a touchdown. Yeah, David Moore in there with an 81-yard game and a touchdown. Like, all of a sudden, these random wide receivers who we know, like Adam Thielen's not random, but still very, very old at this point. And then David Moore and Jalen Coker, like, get this guy, get Bryce Young in his 3rd year, a true wide receiver 1. And I do think it could be great for him. I know they tried that in Xavier Legette last year, and maybe he's the guy that steps up the 2nd year. But I still think with that 8th overall pick, they should be taking one of these top wide receivers. I like Ibuka there. Maybe they move down a few spots. But I do believe they get him a true wide receiver 1 that has that skill set to be like 140 target guy. He could shine in this role with Dave Canales and Bryce Young.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, Michelle. I've tried to give offensive players, and I live in Charlotte, so full disclosure here to the Panthers, and people just get livid. How can you give them an offensive player? Their defense stunk. So, but look, this is where they're going to butter their bread here, right? This is the more accelerated part. I mean, they do have some good pieces on offense that you look at. So I don't know if they'll go too early, but I think they'll be on the radar for a wide receiver draft. Now, this is also dependent on how much they feel about Xavier Legette, right? Do they think he's, quote, legit as a potential big play guy on the outside? I mean, they banged the table kind of to take him in the 2nd round, but of course he didn't stay healthy, and then they had these randos really come through like a Coker and all that. So I am not sure exactly what they're thinking. Do they go like, do they perceive needing a 1 or 2? And that's my only concern. But then you have a Chris Godwin again. I'll mention him because he did so well with Dave Canales in Tampa. So that could be a situation. They also could be signing two guys or drafting a guy and signing another option. I could see so many things that they try to do. I know there's been a lot of, hey, go get T. Higgins. Go get T. Higgins. He went to Clemson. He's right down the street here. That's going to be the ideal guy that you put. And then if Leggett works out, you're in business here. But would not surprise me if they go double up on free agent receivers here that give them situational help in the slot and the outside. We'll see what happens with Adam Thielen. He keeps on producing, so maybe they don't need an inside guy as much. But I would expect they're going to give themselves some more options other than Leggett and Thielen, who I still think are the best guys, even though other people produced.
Where would you rather see T. Higgins, with the Patriots or with the Panthers? Because who would be the better quarterback for T. Higgins' skill set? I think that's kind of the question here. Because he's not the typical like amazing separator, right? He can separate enough, but typically he's that more contested catch guy. Who would you feel better about, and what team? The Panthers or the Patriots as the wide receiver one?
Yeah, it's surprising. I think it would be the Panthers because I think Dave Canales has had that type of situation there in Tampa. I think with Josh McDaniels, look, I want him to do well, and I think he can with a schematic sense. But I think Dave Canales is kind of taken over as a better schemer. So I'll say that. And then he's had the big dude there in the red zone that can stretch the field a little bit with Mike Evans. He knows what that is like in Tampa a little bit. I know Evans is a little bit better of a separator than Higgins, but still, it's that big target and go up and get the ball in the red zone and also stretch the field. So I would feel actually better with the Panthers situation. I also think Bryce Young is a little bit further along in his passing development now than Drake May is all of a sudden.
Yep, I'm with you with all that. And then our last best wide receiver vacancy is the Commanders' wide receiver 2 position. They have 2 wide receivers on the roster right now that are not unrestricted free agents this offseason. And it's Terry McLaurin and Luke McCaffrey. That's it. Dyami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder, Noah Brown are all free agents. And they really, I feel like they tried to get a wide receiver 2 involved, right? It kind of went in a rotation with it. Zaccheaus some games, Noah Brown a couple games, Dyami Brown at the end of the year. Like they wanted a good wide receiver 2. Now maybe they just re-signed Dyami Brown because of his slight emergence at the end of the year. But I think they really should go and get Jaden Daniels, like an upgrade at wide receiver 2. Isaiah Bond comes to mind for Texas. You brought up Matthew Golden. This is exactly like where we were last year. A.D. Mitchell was being talked up ahead of Xavier Worthy. I didn't understand it at all. And then luckily Worthy did go ahead and A.D. Mitchell was pointless. When I'm watching Texas games, Matthew Golden never even stuck out to me as like this great NFL prospect. And now I'm seeing him on these top lists. Isaiah Bond, though, on the other hand, did. I'm like, he's great. So I like Bond more as a prospect. I think he could be really interesting there with Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I think either guy from that system would really be a good fit. And again, it's okay if they have a couple of field stretchers because Jaden Daniels has a big arm. So I'm okay with that because Dyami Brown was a speedster, right? He made some plays downfield. He was kind of the guy at the end. You had Olamide Zaccheaus make some plays in the middle of the field. They weren't quite fully ready to trust Luke McCaffrey as that slot guy. So that was coming into play here. Then Noah Brown, of course, made the biggest catch in the Commander season on the Hail Mary against the Bears. So when you look at it, look, they were just rotating guys. You're absolutely right. They were trying to find their number 2. In some sense, Zach Ertz was their number 2 in the end of the season. So I think they're trying to find that guy who can create some big plays. I agree with you. I think with Golden, it's just more what the reaction of the scouts are and evaluating what happened in the postseason. But I think Bond, to me, going back to Alabama, keep in mind he was at Alabama before. I liked him there as well. So either one of those guys are going to be special, I think, in the NFL. Just have to find their right role. So Ohio State has been along the team now that you look at, but I think a lot of the Texas receivers are falling in line as well. So again, the Commanders should try to tap into one of those. You would look at Cliff Kingsbury. Would you take a shot on a guy like Marquise Hollywood Brown, right? They had a brief feeling in Arizona. So would he go and take him on a shot and then go deep? Another receiver I like, I'm going a little bit deeper on my draft board here, is Jack Betch from TCU. Look, TCU doesn't have a great history. We know with Quentin Johnston, going back to some of these guys, Josh Doxson, and people that haven't worked out. But Jack Betch is a type of guy that I think can really be good here in their offense. So again, there are a lot of really good draft receivers. And in the end, I think that's what I expect the Commanders to do, pick from some of the guys we've just mentioned here. And when we're talking about these guys, these are borderline late first round, early second round type picks right now for the moment, which would put the Commanders right in range at the 29th pick.
Yeah, and this could be another good spot for Darius Slayton. Like I'm just thinking of those wide receiver 2 roles that could use a speedster. That could be an interesting landing spot for him as well. But those are our 6 best wide receiver vacancies for this offseason. We'll see who lands in each spot. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to us on a podcast app, give us a like, review, all that good stuff. We will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.